Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles. And every now and then I do like to bring you a battle that isn't just a bunch of tier 8, 9s and 10s battering the bollocks out of each other, because the majority of you don't have tier 8s, 9s and 10s, and so that's what we've got today. This is a tier 4 battle featuring Funny Farmer in the American tier 4 light cruiser USS Phoenix, a ship that's famous, or perhaps infamous would be a more accurate term, for pretty much being made out of citadels, like its big brother at tier 5, the Omaha. In fact, down here at tier 4, that pretty much describes every cruiser that you're ever likely to see, with the notable exception of this ship's immediate predecessor, the USS St. Louis, which is as tough as a bag of rocks. In many ways, the Phoenix can feel like a bit of a letdown after the St. Louis, because the St. Louis is a glorious tier 3 cruiser. It's tough, and it's made out of guns, but it is pretty slow. The Phoenix sacrifices a lot of that durability and a lot of that firepower for some speed and some anti-aircraft firepower, although let's not get carried away, this is still definitely not an anti-aircraft defence cruiser. It's a light scout cruiser and it should be played as such. With the emphasis on the light and the cruiser, it's definitely not a scout. You should still definitely try to leave the scouting down to the destroyers, like that Itziaslav up ahead. And this is why Funny Farmer is not charging ahead at full speed. He's taking it nice and slow and easy and waiting to see what the rest of his team are doing. Because, well, those three at least don't seem to be in too much of a rush to move forward. And we've all been there, of course. The game starts, you're in a fast cruiser, you fire up full speed to the engines, straight towards the enemy, only to realise that the destroyers that should have been leading the way are all AFK, and the battleships haven't even loaded into the match yet, so you're the first one spotted, and when you're in something as lightly armoured as the Phoenix, that usually means you're the first one killed. Funny Farmer isn't falling for that one twice. He's been there, seen it, done it, and got the t-shirt. He's letting somebody else go up and light targets up for him. They've got one cruiser spotted so far. Now wait, there's a battleship as well, and he's just popped into view range. Actually, no, the battleship is still out of view range, but there's one of the enemy destroyers. So the Itziaslav is coming under fire, and it looks like he's returning fire. And technically, that destroyer up there is inside shooting range. But, well, at that kind of range, all you're really going to do is miss and give your position away. So Funny Farmer's holding his fire for the moment. Itziaslav up ahead, coming under fire from at least one destroyer and one cruiser, has popped his smoke and is taking cover behind the island. The Karlsruhe up there with him is also hiding inside the smokescreen, and that means nobody's spotting any of those enemy ships. And that's really bad news for Funny Farmer, because there's nothing for him to shoot at, and he is detected, although I'm pretty sure he does not have the priority target skill, so we don't know exactly how many people are aiming at him at the moment. Still, if you don't know, it always pays to assume the worst and just assume that everybody is aiming at you, and that's why he's piled on full speed. He's no longer casually loitering around, waiting to see what's going to happen, but he doesn't seem to be attracting any fire, and there go the torpedoes. The Itziaslav and the Karlsruhe, whether through luck or judgment, have managed to avoid them, but somebody up there's got him detected, and he's slowing again, which is a little brave, considering you don't know exactly how many ships currently have you targeted, and that's when the Danae pops up. There it is, firing his guns at one of the friendly battleships to the rear. And a whole bunch of other enemy ships have just become visible. They've obviously started shooting. It's increased their detection range, and now finally got something to shoot back at. And that Danae appears to be taking the brunt of the argument, at least right now. Funny Farmer's doing something a little interesting here. He's actually reversing while keeping his guns firing at these enemy ships. Initially, I thought, well, looking at the detection indicator, nobody actually has him targeted. So, I mean, if it seems stupid, but nobody's actually shooting at you, then yeah, sure, go ahead. Reverse and keep your guns firing. But I can confirm that he does not actually have that priority target skill. You'll quite clearly see it later on when somebody does start shooting at him. It's just that nobody's actually shooting at him yet. They're all going for other targets. Very narrowly avoided a collision up ahead there. There he is. It's nice when the enemy team have more important things to shoot at than you. It doesn't happen to me very often. The Funny Farmer's certainly making the most of it. I mean, he hasn't scored that many hits so far because he is firing at the extreme range of his guns, and he's falling back, which means that those ships are going to stay at the extreme limit of the range of his guns, so he's unlikely to score too many hits. But they haven't lost any ships up here to the north yet. Same cannot be said of what's happening to the rest of his team down to the south. 3 of them down. Enemy team are just about to finish capping Charlie. They hold Alpha, but that situation is going to change very, very soon. Sneaky little destroyer there. Looks like he's trying to make a run for Bravo. Funny Farmer's managed to hit him, knocked out his engine, knocked out his steering. He's almost certainly going to repair that, of course. Now he's no longer detected. There's the Danai again. He's had the bejesus smacked out of him because he insists on sailing broadside on and showing his citadel to all of these enemy ships, and he does not appear to have learned his lesson yet. And he is almost... Yep, there we go. That was entirely predictable. That's the first enemy casualty. Funny Farmer's team are down 3 ships. The enemy team control 2 of the 3 cap circles, and Funny Farmer's team do not control any of the cap circles. They have less than half the point score of the enemy team, and they've got no points coming in, although they are now at least starting to contest Alpha. But the enemy team, almost certainly that destroyer that just sneaked past after having his engines and rudder knocked out, is now capping Bravo as well. Funny Farmer's team do not currently hold any of the cap points, so the only points they've got coming in is from sinking enemy ships, and they've only managed to do that once so far. This game... Well, okay, the South Carolina over there is probably not going to survive this, but Funny Farmer's team are down to 125 points, while the enemy team almost have 500. South Carolina is on fire in at least 2 places, and he is done. So that's bought a bit of breathing space for Funny Farmer's team. They've sunk the second ship. They still have less than half the points of the enemy team. But then again, when you take into consideration that a moment ago they had a quarter of the points total of the enemy team, only having half the points of the enemy team doesn't seem so bad. But the good news is not going to last forever, because further down south, bang, they've just lost yet another ship, and now they're down to 106 points, and once again they only have a quarter of the score of the enemy team. So they need to finish off this South Carolina to buy them some more breathing space, and that's Funny Farmer's first kill. So that's all enemy ships in the northern spawn neutralised. Well, not all of them. One of them ran south and capped Bravo. So there's one of the destroyers from the northern spawn is down there somewhere towards the south, wreaking havoc. And bang, they've just lost another ship, and momentarily they were down to 104 points. They do still have a small amount of points trickling in, because they have managed to capture Alpha. But the enemy team have more points trickling in, because they hold Bravo and Charlie. They're 500 points up already because they've sunk more ships, and they're going to gain points at a faster rate because they hold more of the capture circles. We momentarily spotted an enemy Phoenix to the south, who didn't have a lot of health, but we also spotted an enemy Wyoming Tier 4 battleship, who did have a lot of health. And that's not good news, not when you're in a light cruiser. Enemy Caledon spotted, and he's just inside gun range. Although the firing arcs aren't good, we're probably not going to get more than 1 or 2 salvos away at him. And this is the real bad news. Funny Farmer's team have lost their carrier, the enemy team haven't. And if the enemy carrier is a good player, don't laugh, it could happen. Miracles happen even at Tier 4, then Funny Farmer's team have got a real uphill struggle ahead of them. Because those aircraft, used wisely, are going to be a real pain in the arse for that Ityaslav. He's almost certainly been spotted by the aircraft, who are not actually attacking him, they're going for the Wyoming to the rear. The Caledon up ahead has taken a couple of hits, and yep, the torpedo bombers are making the attack on the Wyoming, and I'm pretty sure the dive bombers are coming in as well. Looks like the Wyoming's managed to sink one of the dive bombers. Shoot down one of the dive bombers as they commit to the attack. And the Wyoming has managed to kill the V-170. I don't know if that's good shooting or lucky shooting. It's probably lucky shooting. It's a Wyoming after all. It's not renowned for having great accuracy. How's he doing? Let's have a look. He's managed to avoid all the torpedoes. And either the dive bombers missed or they didn't inflict significant damage. Well done, Wyoming. Nice to see, especially down here at Tier 4. Of course, it's entirely possible that the captain of the Wyoming up ahead there is in fact an experienced player who's just grinding his way down the American battleship line. But it's equally possible that he's a new player who's only just reached Tier 4. He's just, you know, good. It happens. Oh, emergency torpedo beat. No, too late, missed it. The enemy Wyoming, on the other hand, he's definitely not an experienced player grinding his way up the American battleship line, because he gets hit, he gets set on fire, and he instantly uses his damage control ability. This is how you can tell a new player when you see one. Battleships. One fire is not going to kill you. And if you waste your damage control ability when you're burning in one location, particularly when you're in range of a whole bunch of ships that are all spamming high explosive at you, like Funny Farmer here in the Phoenix, the next time you get set on fire, it's gonna stick. And they're still shooting high explosives at you, so there's a good chance that you're going to take another fire, and possibly another fire. And if you haven't taken the relevant captain skills because you're still quite new to the game and you're only in a tier 4 battleship, another fire, and that is going to kill you. Your damage repair ability will heal back 100% of all the fire damage that you've sustained. Damage control is not for putting out one fire, it's for putting out multiple fires and stopping the flooding. So that Wyoming, he's going to continue to burn for quite some time. Can Funny Farmer steal the kill on that Caledon? He did manage to get some shots out just before he... Oh, what a shot! Kill secured, like a boss. Kill number 2. Now, his team are still roughly half of the points of the enemy team, but they now control Alpha and Bravo. So providing they can stop losing ships, they've now got more points coming in than the enemy team. And we're just going to have to leave that Wyoming to burn for a while, because here comes the rest of the enemy fleet, led by Akuma. Akuma appears to have forgotten that he has guns, and he's just sailing into range of his torpedoes. So he's almost certainly trying to line up for a torpedo shot. Funny Farmer switches to the armour piercing, because, hey, broadside on, a paddling's a paddling whether you're in a cruiser or a battleship. And he's knocked that guy's engines out, and he looks like he's only just remembered that he has guns, although too little, too late. That Kuma has almost certainly unloaded his torpedoes at maximum range, and, well, that's the only explanation I can come up with for what Funny Farmer is actually doing right now. He's reversing again, broadside onto not just a Kuma, who has finally figured out what his guns are for, but also a Karlsruhe. So I can only assume that he's stopped and he's reversing to avoid any torpedoes fired by the Kuma, but that's making him a sitting duck for not just the Karlsruhe's guns, but the Kuma has also figured out what his guns are for, and they have both just scored some serious hits on him, but the Karlsruhe has made a crucial mistake. There go Funny Farmer's torpedoes. The Karlsruhe either forgot that the Phoenix is one of only 2 non-premium American cruisers that come on with torpedoes, or he just didn't know in the first place. Both are entirely possible, and he's just paid the price for that by chewing on 2 of Funny Farmer's torpedoes. And now he's dead too. Kill number 3. The Kuma is still alive. He has fixed his engines, but now he's sailing backwards as well. And he's doing it not just in front of Funny Farmer's guns, but also a Kawachi Tier 3 battleship. I don't know, maybe he's just sitting there waiting for his torpedoes to come back up. Either way, well, it's not the best decision he ever made, because any second now, entirely predictably, he's dead too. And now, for the first time since the beginning of the match, both teams have the same number of ships. The enemy team is still ahead on points, but not by much. And I sense another potential kill steal coming in. Oh, come on, who's going to fire first? Can he get the shots off before that guy burns to death? And kill number 4 secured like an absolute boss. And to be completely fair, he has done 70,000 damage of his own. Funny Farmer's team are now ahead by 1 kill, and for the first time this game, they're also ahead on points. The enemy team have 3 ships remaining, the Phoenix, the Carrier, and that Wyoming, who's on full health. Now, normally at this stage in a battle, seeing a full health top tier battleship on the enemy team would be the kind of thing that would make you want to curl up into a little ball and cry for your mama. But we'll come on to that in a moment, because for now I want to focus on the enemy Carrier. Have a look at the friendly Kawachi down there. He's sailing straight down this very, very narrow channel between 2 islands while taking hits from the Phoenix, and there are enemy aircraft coming in, dive bombers and torpedo bombers. If the enemy Carrier is any good, he can still swing the outcome of this battle by torpedoing and dive bombing that Kawachi when he's in the straits down there and has very, very limited room to maneuver. And this is where I began to get the idea that the enemy carrier was also just that little bit of a noob, because he has the perfect opportunity to either sink or severely damage the Kawachi. And look at where his torpedo bombers are going. What are they doing over there? And the Kawachi is going to make it through that strait and into open water, where he can use his admittedly limited manoeuvrability to its best advantage against the incoming torpedo bombers. Meanwhile, Funny Farmer has his hands full with this enemy Wyoming, who has managed to score a hit on him. Funny Farmer set him on fire, and this guy is burning for a while. He doesn't immediately use his damage control ability, but then again, that's 2, possibly 3 fires. Initially, if you were to see an enemy battleship on mostly full health at this late stage of the game, you might rightly think to yourself, the guy's a noob, he's been hanging around at the back of the map, firing at targets at the extreme limit of the range of his guns. He's no threat whatsoever. But then again, he didn't just burn his damage control instantly as soon as he got set on fire. He waited until there was 3 fires burning before he used it. So maybe he does know what he's doing. Maybe he is actually really, really good. Or maybe he is a bit of a noob and he just used the damage control the second it came off cooldown. Either way, Funny Farmer is completely committed, and we're going to find out, because he just either got citadeled right through the front by the Wyoming, which is entirely possible, or he ate a whole bunch of penetrating armor-piercing shots. Funny Farmer is probably not going to survive this engagement. The Wyoming does indeed finish him off, but he did manage to set him on fire again and fire some torpedoes, and we know that guy's just used his damage control ability, but he has left it awfully late to turn to avoid the inevitable torpedoes. Now, he only took 1 of them rather than all 3, but it's caused flooding because it hit him on the nose, which is a guaranteed flooding, and he is also still burning, so there's the high caliber, and there's the Kraken unleashed. Oh, and just to add insult to injury, he's picked up It's Just a Flesh Wound as well for nailing an enemy ship after he'd been sunk. So now it's 2v2, Phoenix and Langley versus Kawachi and... okay, Itzislav's dead. So now it's Phoenix and Langley versus Kawachi, and the Kawachi basically doesn't have any anti-aircraft guns. It's got all the turning characteristics of a brick. He's caught in a fairly wide channel, but he is between 2 islands, so limited room to manoeuvre, and here they come. Dive bombers and torpedo bombers. Now, the Langley drops his torpedoes a fair old distance out. The Kawachi just doesn't have any anti-aircraft guns. He could walk right up to him and drop the torpedoes. The dive bombers do score a hit and set him on fire, but the Kawachi, even though he's only tier 3, appears to have learned what the enemy Wyoming didn't. He does not immediately burn his damage control until he knows he's not going to take one of those torpedoes. And now he puts the fire out, now that he's no longer in danger of eating a torpedo and suffering flooding after he's used his damage control ability. How the Langley managed to miss a target as slow and slow turning as a Kawachi, I have a pretty good idea why. The torpedoes were dropped from too far out. If he dropped them a little closer, I suspect, and I don't know a huge amount about carriers, I have to admit, but I suspect the Langley is not using manual drop, and that's why the Kawachi was able to get away. But well done to the Kawachi captain. Not bad for a tier 3 battleship, and not just for avoiding the torpedoes, but also for maintaining discipline and not immediately popping his damage control before he needed to use it. And the Langley, again, could have swung this battle in his team's favour if he just used those fighters to spot this guy so the Phoenix could set him on fire. But, well, he isn't. How do you know that, Jingles? Nobody's shooting at him. I'm sure if the Phoenix could shoot at him, he would be, but he isn't. And the Kawachi's teammates have been yelling at him, and he's just done it. Turn right, turn right. And I have to admit, at first I was thinking, why would you want to turn right? The enemy are over to the left, but, yes, hang on. His team are ahead on points now. They control 2 of the cap circles, so they're going to stay ahead on points unless he dies. And there's less than a minute of this game left. So, actually, yes, sailing away from the enemy ships at this point, and the Phoenix has finally spotted him, but staying alive at this point is definitely the smart thing to do. And the Kawachi is naturally concerned that he has to sink the Phoenix, spotting him, otherwise the carrier is going to kill him with the torpedo bombers. But, well, the carrier has to recover, rearm, and then send those torpedo bombers out again. And they're never going to cross the 7 kilometers distance that they need to before the match ends. So turning away was the smart thing to do, because it's won this game. Just a few more seconds, and he's done it. Now, while it was Funny Farmer who sent this replay in the Phoenix, and he certainly did well out of the game. I mean, he did over 103,000 damage in a tier 4 cruiser, managed to get himself 5 kills, Kraken Unleashed, it's just a flesh wound, and the High Caliber Award. I mean, it's certainly a result he can be proud of, but today's video isn't really so much about Funny Farmer in the Phoenix, although he certainly did well. It's about those battleships, both on his team and the enemy team, and the contrast that you can quite clearly see, even down here in a tier 3, tier 4 game, between a battleship player, or a player in general who gets it, and the players that don't. And it's very, very refreshing to see that there are players down here at the lower tiers who do get it. You're always going to get players who don't, and they're going to continue to not get it by just failing all the way up to tier 10, when they'll eventually be failing in Yamatos and Montanas. But the fact that so many players do get it down here at tier 3 and tier 4 makes me feel very optimistic about the future of the player base in World of Warships. And I hope you agree, and I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I hope you have a fantastic weekend, because that's it for today. And as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.